Many believe the old gods punish us with monsters. They are wrong. The gods do not control the monsters. No. The gods punish us by leaving us alone on a cold shore with nothing but our own pride and wait for the monsters to appear. Now, mind you, not all monsters wear the faces we expect. Some rise from black water, and some rise from fear. Some are born in the wounded places of the human heart. This tale is of all three. Long ago, when the sea roads were young, and the names of distant lands were carried home by sailors and ravens, a ship called the Wave Cutter sailed westward from a fjord. She was not the largest ship nor the fastest, but she was strong. Her timbers were oak, and her sail was bright wool. Her crew were men and women who had shared many winters together. Some sought trade or glory, and some were there for silver. Only one sought escape, and that was Heather. Though no one aboard knew it, not even Heather herself. For there are wounds that hide so deeply within us that we mistake their ache for restlessness. She told herself she sought adventure. She told herself she wished to see distant lands. Yet grief sat quietly beside her upon the bench. It had merely borrowed another name. To the crew, she was just quiet Heather, a woman who mended sails, a woman who listened more than she spoke, a woman nobody expected to become important, which is often how some such stories begin. The captain was Hafren, broad-shouldered and stubborn. His sister was Astrid, whose tongue was sharper than most men's swords. There was old Thorstein, who had seen 60 winters and claimed to have fought trolls, though nobody believed him. There was young Leif, eager for fame, and there was Ira, a healer who knew the language of roots and herbs. And there was Heather. For 7 days the sea was kind. The wind filled the sail, and fish leapt beside the ship. The crew laughed, and they sang work songs, and they argued over nonsense the way families do. For every ship is a floating family. And just like every family, old grudges hide just below deck. On the 8th night, the wind died. The sea became still, too still. No gulls, no sound. Even the creaking of the ship seemed afraid. Old Thorstein stopped smiling, and that was the first warning. The old always recognize danger before the young, because they've met it before. The moon rose silver and cold and watching. Then something moved beneath the water. Not a fish or a whale, something larger. The sea swelled. A dark shape passed beneath the hull. The ship lifted and settled. Leif laughed. "'Tis only a whale." Nobody answered, because most of them knew whales do not blot out the stars beneath a ship. The second pass came closer. The sea bulged upward. A ridge appeared, long as a hall, black as a wet stone, covered in barnacles older than kingdoms. Then came the eye. Gods preserve us, the eye, large as a shield, pale and ancient. It rose from the sea and looked directly at them, not hungry, not angry, merely aware, as though a mountain had suddenly decided to notice the ants. The creature surfaced. The sea exploded around it, and water crashed across the deck. People fell. The mast groaned, and the monster rose higher and higher, a neck like a serpent, a body hidden beneath the depths, a mouth lined with teeth carved like fishing hooks. Leif screamed, and Astrid cursed. Thorstein began praying, which frightened everyone more than the creature, because Thorstein never prayed. The monster struck. Its tail shattered an oar. Its body slammed the hull. Timbers screeched, and the ship lurched. Men and women grabbed axes and spears as though iron could threaten something that had survived before their grandfathers were born. Still they fought, because courage is not believing you can win. Courage is refusing to surrender when defeat seems certain. Remember that. Hafren hurled a spear. It struck. The creature barely noticed. Astrid drove an axe into the scale, thick as armor. The monster roared, and the sound shook the stars. Water erupted over the deck, and people vanished beneath the waves. Others dragged them back. Again and again the creature attacked, and again the crew resisted. not because they were stronger, but because they were together. Then the sea beast struck the mast. The great timber cracked and the sail collapsed. The ship twisted and the wave cutter went down. The sea swallowed her. The storm came after, as of course it did. The sea is cruel that way. It rarely ends a disaster with dignity. Darkness, cold water, broken wood, screams, and silence. Morning arrived, and with it a shore. A harsh place, rocky, wind-scoured, and unknown. One by one the survivors crawled from the sea, bruised, exhausted, grieving, alive, mostly. Not everyone survived. The sea had claimed its payment as it always does. The living buried the dead beneath cairns of stone. No songs or speeches. Some grief is too heavy for words. Then came the harder task, living. They built shelters from driftwood. They gathered shellfish. They searched for fresh water. Days became weeks. The weather turned colder. Hope grew thinner. And that is when the second monster appeared. Not from the sea, but from within. People began blaming one another. Others took sides. Leaf spat into the gray sand, pointing a finger with his thick saltwater sword at Afrin's chest. "You looked at a dead wind and told us the Norns favored the voyage," he hissed, his voice cracking with the terror of a boy who realized his name would never be sung. "You traded our oars for a grave because your pride couldn't bear to rot in the fjord." Afrin did not strike him. He only stared at his own palms, raw and empty, the silence of a broken leader heavier than any blow. But Astrid did not hold her peace. She stepped between him, her jaw set like a cold iron, and her gaze cutting through Leaf until he looked away. "You speak of bravest boy," she whispered, her voice dangerously quiet against the roar of the surf. "Your axe was clean when the mast cracked. I watched your fingers freeze to the gunwale while old Thorstein prayed. You didn't lose your ship, Leaf. You lost your spine before the hull even split." "Enough!" roared Thorstein, his aged voice coughing on the damp smoke of their failing driftwood. "The sea isn't listening to your squabbling. It already took its meat. Now the frost is coming, and we are digging our trenches with our words." But the poison had already left the tongue. The circle split that very hour. Old arguments buried deep beneath winters of shared ale and successful harvest crawled out of the dark like pale worms. A borrowed tool that was never returned 3 summers ago became proof of a thief in the camp. A slight shift in a rowing schedule became evidence of ancient malice. Small resentments became large ones. Every mistake became proof of someone's failure. Every hardship became someone's fault. The settlement was divided. Meals were eaten separately. Work slowed. Suspicion spread. The sea creature had broken their ship. Now fear threatened to break their people. Heather watched quietly, as she always had. The wave cutter crew, now stranded and divided by distrust on the desolate shore, struggles to survive as winter approaches and old resentments resurface. Amidst the brewing conflict, quiet Heather prepares to face her internal grief, completing the trilogy of monsters that have haunted them. Part 2 of this gripping saga is coming soon, revealing the secrets of the crew and the fate of Heather. So return to the fire soon, my friend. Until then.